In this section of Algebra 1, we are looking at part 2 of the properties of algebra. So previously, we did about 7 properties, if I remember correctly. So we're going to add on 5 more over here. And hopefully, when we put it all together, it'll be something that you can kind of remember and use throughout the way. So starting with the very top, we're going to look at the distributive properties. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out here, which says the following. If you have any number A multiplied by some number B, or actually B, not C, plus C, the result is that you are going to get A times B and then plus A times C. And similarly, I guess I can just write it above it. If you have A multiplied by B minus C, that is going to give you A times B multiplied by A minus C. So we'll use that in just a little bit so you can see how that actually works out. Let's see, if we keep going, we're looking at 4 more properties underneath. One is called commutative for addition, and that one I feel like we take for granted quite a bit, but we don't really even say it out loud. The commutative addition says that A plus C is equal to C plus A. So for example, that's like saying 3 plus 4 is then equal to 4 plus 3. These are what we call axioms, meaning that they are so simple that we just can't prove it, but we use it quite often and we just kind of take them for granted. For the next one afterward, for the commutative for multiplication, it's kind of the same idea. If you take any 2 numbers and you multiply them together, the result is that you can just flip the order like such. So A times C is equal to C times A. So an example of that, maybe something like, say, 5 times 7 is the same thing as 7 times 5. Now, for commutative, the best way I can think of it is that it's commute, meaning you're supposed to move 2 things. So notice how A and C are swap positions, so that's how I can remember that it's commutative. Whereas associative for addition, we're looking at grouping. So something like the following then. A plus in parentheses B plus C is equal to in parentheses A plus B and then plus C. So that is an example of associative. Notice how the grouping is a little bit different for all the additions, so long as provided everything is addition. Now, whereas for multiplication, the same idea here, if you have A multiplied by B times C in parentheses first, that is going to be the same thing as in parentheses A times B multiplied by C. So meaning you can do what's inside the parentheses first, and then that way you can go ahead and multiply it out and it'll be exactly the same thing. So let's go ahead and move on and use some of these properties so you can see how this works. So underneath we have some problem where it says state the property that is being used. The first problem says you have 4x is equal to x times 4. So remember what we said. Commutative is basically about moving, right? So any time that you see 2 things that are being moved, most likely it's going to be commutative in this case. Now, since we're dealing with the operation of multiplication, then that means it's going to be commutative for multiplication then. So that's going to be our answer. So it's going to be the commutative for multiplication. For the next one, 6a plus 7a is equal to 6 plus 7 in parentheses times a. Doesn't look like any of the 4 that we have right there, so most likely if you look above it, it's going to be the distributive property. So you'll notice that the a is kind of like distributed to each part of the 6 and each part of the 7 if you go from the right to the left. So anytime you have something like that where you multiply something out, yeah, that's going to be the distributive property. So that one is going to be distributive, and that's our answer right there. The one afterwards, we have 20 times x plus 5 is equal to 20 times 5 plus x. And you're wondering, okay, well, if you look carefully, it kind of looks like the distributive property, but it's actually not. If you look at what is being altered in there, that actually tells you a better story. Note, yes, it looks like the distributive property, but if you look at inside, it says x plus 5, that is changed into 5 plus x. So because that's the part that's actually changed, then that means that it has to do with, well, once again, commutative. But unlike before, it's going to be the commutative for addition because it becomes x plus 5 and becomes 5 plus x. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and say that it's a commutative for addition. So be very careful. Maybe underline what is it that is being changed, so then that way you can see it better. Next one, 5a plus b in parentheses plus 7 is equal to 5a plus in parentheses b plus 7. So note that we have parentheses, and it looks like it's going to be swapped in this case between 2 terms that are going to be different. So to me, that is going to be associative. And by the way, associative, right? We can go ahead and say that it has to do with grouping. So just to kind of help you see it a little bit better. And associative, once again, it's going to be for multiplication. You have to say the operation that goes along with associative and also commutative. If you want to try the last two first before I go on, totally fine. But if not, then we're going to go ahead and move on and see how it happens then. The last two, we have A times B times C is equal to A times C times B. So here, looking at what is it that is changed, right? I'm just going to go ahead and underline it. The first part on the left, you have B times C, and the part also on the right, we have C times B. So just looking at strictly what is being changed, you can now see what is actually happening. So because B and C are swapped, then we're going to say that it's going to be commutative. And then because everything is multiplied, then it's going to be commutative for multiplication. So this one is going to be for commutative for multiplication, just like the one that's going to be above. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and look at that last one. And this is kind of a curveball because it's actually not one of these. Trying to go backward and see if you guys remember how this works out. 9a plus 0 is equal to 9a. If you remember from the last section, this is not one of the following properties that we have, but rather it's an old property that we had from the last section. It is more specifically additive identity because any number plus 0 is always equal to itself. So additive identity. Okay, so for today, your homework, it's going to be a combination of the old properties and also the new properties. We're going to have to put them all together. Hopefully you'll have an easy time with it. We'll see how it goes. Have a good one.